Hello, ma'am. Now we are going to begin with our inaugural session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Rajashree, could you give me one mail ID on which I can mail my PPT, like in case if it does not work and you need to operate it from your side? Just WhatsApp me some mail ID so that I can share my PPT.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
झालं
Hello, Ajit. Hello. Hello, Ajit. Turn off your mic. Ajit, turn off your mic. Ajit. Ajit Mawalkar, turn off your mic.
A very good morning to honorable dignitaries, learned delegates, respected teachers, and participants. I, Assistant Professor Poonam Haske from Department of Mathematics, on behalf of the Keli Society Science and Commerce College, Kalamboli, feel privileged to welcome you all for the one-day national e-conference on changing dimensions of teaching and learning English language and literature in the digital era. As Albertson's Gorgie once said, research is to see what everybody else has seen and to think what nobody else has thought. Before introducing our conference, let's owe our university song.
मन्दिरं शारदाया मुम्बापुरी विश्वविद्यालयम् इदं सुन्दरं मन्दिरं शारदाया मुम्बापुरी विश्वविद्यालयम् कलाशास्त्रवाणिज्यशाखाभिरूढा अमूढादिमुक्तादिहन्ता वयम् शृण्वन्तु सर्वे दृढं निश्चयम् शृण्वन्तु सर्वे दृढं निश्चयम् इदं सुन्दरं मन्दिरं शारदाया मुम्बापुरी विश्वविद्यालयम् सत्यं वदामो धर्मं चरामो नयामो नृणा दुःखभारं लयम् सत्यं वदामो धर्मं चरामो नयामो नृणा दुःखभारं लयम् स्वकार्ये रतानां सदा जागृतानां भवेत्किं भविष्येति तस्मात् भयम् शृण्वन्तु सर्वे दृढं निश्चयम् शृण्वन्तु सर्वे दृढं निश्चयम् इदं सुन्दरं मन्दिरं शारदाया मुम्बापुरी विश्वविद्यालयम् युवा स्यात् बलिष्ठो युवा स्यात् गरिष्ठो युवा ध्येयनिष्ठो विभूयाद्वयम् युवा स्यात् बलिष्ठो युवा स्यात् गरिष्ठो युवा ध्येयनिष्ठो विभूयाद्वयम् यदि स्यात् युवा राष्ट्रकर्तव्यनिष्ठा समानेर्ततत्त्वं विलोकत्रयम् शृण्वन्तु सर्वे दृढं निश्चयम् शृण्वन्तु सर्वे दृढं निश्चयम् इदं सुन्दरं मन्दिरं शारदाया मुम्बापुरी विश्वविद्यालयम् वन्दामहे भारतं पूजनीयं स्वदेशात् परं नास्ति देवालयम् वन्दामहे भारतं पूजनीयं स्वदेशात् परं नास्ति देवालयम् अत्रैव सर्वे प्रतिष्ठापयामो ममत्वेन सार्धं समत्वं वयम् शृण्वन्तु सर्वे दृढं निश्चयम् शृण्वन्तु सर्वे दृढं निश्चयम् इदं सुन्दरं मन्दिरं
This national conference gives an opportunity to exchange our ideas with each other, and occasions like this help us to test our knowledge and understanding. We are looking forward to get an exposure about what the rest of the brain thinks over these dynamic issues of changing dimensions of teaching and learning English language and literature in the digital era. The digital era has brought unprecedented transformations in the process of teaching and learning. Both students and teachers have benefited from the incorporation of technologies and online resources, which provide interactive, participative, and personalized language learning experiences. There is shift towards more communicative and task-oriented teaching, learning, pedagogy for the purpose of enhancement of skills as well as knowledge amongst learners. Advent of virtual classroom and online tutoring have facilitated flexible and convenient language learning. The digital era has opened up new dimensions for creating and delivering lessons, as well as for assessment and tracking progress of students. It has also facilitated greater collaboration and communication with students and has expanded the reach of language teachers to a global audience. Use of technology has also created challenges among the teachers as well as students. Overall, the digital age has greatly enhanced the accessibility and the effectiveness of English language and literature in the 21st century. The theme of the conference, Changing Dimensions of Teaching and Learning English Language and Literature in the Digital Era, is important as it highlights the need for educators to adapt to the rapidly changing technological landscape and modify their teaching practices to meet the need of their students in the digital era. Now, I would like to request Assistant Professor Milind Gurchal sir to introduce the advisory committee members.
Thank you, ma'am. It is my privilege to introduce the advisory board committee members, which guided us at all stages of the planning of these conferences. In our advisory board committee members, we are having with us Dr. Vivek Rankambe sir. He is the principal of Yashwantrao Mohite College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Bharati Vidyapith, Pune. We are also had our advisory board member, Dr. Ashok Sachdeva. He is a professor and head Mata Jijabai Government PG Girls College, Indore. We are, or on our board, we are having with us Dr. Dilip Barad sir. He is a professor and head Department of English, MK Bhavnagar University, Gujarat. We are also having Dr. Ashok Chaskar, head Department of English, SP College, Pune. We are on our board, we are having Dr. Sudhir Nikam sir, former chairman, Board of Studies in English, University of Mumbai. Dr. S.D. Sargar, professor and head Department of English, University of Mumbai. Dr. Rajesh Evle sir, department head of the Department of UG and PG courses at Research Center in English, Changu Kana Thakur Arts, Commerce and Science College, New Panvel. We are also having with us Dr. M.S. Xavier Pradeep Singh, Assistant Professor, PG and Research Center, Department of English at St. Joseph College, Autonomous College. Thank you, all of you, for being a part of our advisory board member. Over to you, Punam.
Thank you, sir. Now, I request our Honorable Principal, Dr. Giri sir, to convey a few words of our today's national conference.
Happy morning to all of you. Today's keynote speaker, Dr. Bhumika Sharma Madam, our resource persons for today's conference, Professor Mrudula Nair Madam, Dr. Maya Pandey Madam, Assistant Professor Swati Bhise Madam, Dr. Rajesh Evle Sir, and all participants. First of all, I congratulate the Department of English, KLE College of Science and Commerce, Kalamboli, Navi, Mumbai, for organizing this one-day national e-conference on the topic Changing Dimensions of Teaching and Learning English Language and Literature in the Digital Era. The days have gone when our teachers, they used to teach us English and we used to visualize all. We used to be the part of that particular story or that particular drama, whatever, sir, they were teaching to us. And we were in the dream of imaginations. Now there are a lot of options. The technology has given us several options to learn English language, English literature. Though there will be a lot of developments in the field of technology, no language will die. And there will be a need for every one of us to know the digitization facilities and adopt those digitization facilities in the study of literature. Because in every language, whatever literature is available, that puts lives in us. And therefore, this conference is organized today. Dr. Bhumika Sharma, madam, is there. Expert who is of English literature. Dr. Rajesh Evle sir is there. He is a very much ahead in absorption technology, as I have seen his language lab also. So it is an opportunity for all the participants, all the research students to deliberate on different aspects of digitization in teaching and learning process, especially from the point of view of literature. So this is a virtual welcome to all of you, sir and ma'ams, that I welcome on behalf of KLE Society, Belgavi, and also on behalf of our chairman, sir, Dr. Prabhakar Kore, on behalf of my all teacher colleagues, non-teaching staff and students on the occasion of this national level e-conference. Once again, welcome you all, sir. Thank you. Over to Poonam.
Thank you so much, Principal Sir, for the words of wisdom. I would request Assistant Professor Rajashree Bhorkade, Head of English Department and Convener of the today's National E-Conference, to introduce our today's keynote speaker, Dr. Bhumika Sharma.
Thank you, Poonam ma'am. I, Assistant Professor Rajashree Bhorkade, Head Department of English and Conference Convener, feel privileged to introduce the keynote speaker, Dr. Bhumika Sharma. Dr. Bhumika Sharma is an Assistant Professor in the Department of English, Central University of Rajasthan, a double postgraduate with Masters in English and Economics from the University of Rajasthan. She holds a doctorate in English. Her research interest includes Indian English literature, gender studies, post-colonial literature, and African American writing. She served as chairperson, Anti-Sexual Harassment Cell of Central University of Rajasthan for 3 years and was elected as chairperson, University Complaint Committee, which is a university mechanism for grievance redressal. She has authored the book African American Journey to the Power Dome, Wright, Ellison, Baldwin, published by Cambridge Scholars Publishing, London, and co-authored 2 books titled The Sense of Being, An Exploration of Immateriality in the Matter, and The Logic of Consciousness, Understanding the Evolution of Sense. She has also co-edited a book, Discoursing Minority in Text and Co-Text. Besides books, she has around 40 publications as research articles and book chapters in various anthologies and journals of national and international repute, including Indian literature published by Sahitya Academy, Journal of African American Studies published by Springer, USA, and Epiphany, Journal of Transdisciplinary Studies published by International University of Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. She has delivered invited talks and presented papers in around 60 conferences and seminars that include her presentation in American Comparative Literature Association Congress 2016 at Harvard University, USA, and 12th International Comparative Literature Association Congress 2019 at University of Macau. A hearty welcome to the conference, ma'am, and thank you so much for joining with us today on this virtual platform. Over to you, Poonam ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for introducing our today's keynote speaker. Now I request our honorable keynote speaker, Dr. Bhumika Sharma, ma'am, to address the audience.
Hello, ma'am. Please turn on your mic.
Thank you, Dr. Poonam. Thank you, Dr. Rajashree. I am really grateful to KLE Society Science and Commerce College for giving me this opportunity and deliver the keynote address, because it opens the platform to interact within academia. And I think that is very much required in the digital era, because we are expanding. We are expanding in terms of the place, we are expanding in terms of the time. And the topic which you have selected today is basically the deliberation on the you can say the changing dimensions of English language and teaching in digital era. It's a very, very important, very significant topic. So I thank Dr. Prabhakar Kore, the chairman of the KLE Society, who has facilitated such an intellectual discussion here in the form of this conference. I also thank Dr. Ghanshyam ji, Dr. Giri, who is the principal of this college, and of course convener Dr. Rajashree, who actually extended this invitation, and the first I had an interaction with her over phone. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And today I would like to talk about the English classroom pedagogy in the context of literature, because there has been major changes in the pedagogy, and that is the topic which I would like to discuss with the audience today. So let me share my presentation. I hope, Dr. Rajashree, you have made me the co-host here. So I'll share and let's see how does it work.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is it visible, Dr. Rajashree?
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Okay. So this is the topic which I would like to talk about today, that is the changing pedagogy of English studies in the digital era. I would like to begin with this quote that I really found very relevant, because Johann Wolfgang
Hello,
von
ma'am.
Goethe.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Ma'am, please, full slideshow. Keep your PPT presentation on full slideshow.
I think there is some issue, because in my laptop it is in full slideshow. Maybe you can operate the PPT there, because I have clicked that icon and it is in full slideshow, and I'm again stopping to share it. So in case, like, if you can operate the PPT from your side, because it is there, like, full slideshow in my laptop.
Okay, ma'am. Just a minute. Let me try.
Yeah. I think it is working now, but I would like to see the slides. Yeah, it is visible. Shall I begin? As the slide which is visible there on the screen is the title slide.
Yes, ma'am. It's
So I'll
visible.
just let you know when you switch to the next slide. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so I was talking about this quote which I really found very inspiring. This is by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who is a poet, playwright, and novelist, very renowned figure. So he said, the greatest thing in this world is not so much where we stand, as in what direction we are moving. So he has pointed out a very important thing, that we do stand in a place which is basically the present, but it is not so important to realize or to sense or to experience that present, but we need to know that in what direction we are moving from present to the future. So basically this digital era and the digitalization is the future. In fact, it is present also, and at the same time it is the future of the human civilization. So keeping in that that idea in this context, perhaps we need to understand that how our academics, how our academic pedagogy, and how our academic experience is moving into the new direction with this whole process of digitalization. Next. You kindly move to the next slide. I'll just, yeah. So in this context, maybe we can talk about that how this digital era has affected the discipline of humanity. So when we talk about the digitalization, it begins with a very basic concept, very basic understanding of our day-to-day experience, and that is the integration of the computers and English. Here I am talking about English because we are more focused on the discipline which we belong to, but it happens with the rest of the disciplines, other disciplines also. It's not only the discipline of English which was affected by this integration of computers in its academic pedagogy, but all the disciplines had the same experience. But when it came to English, it became slightly more challenging, more interesting, more experimental, because English is the subject or a discipline that is more reading and writing extensive. So we know the sciences are more practical in nature in terms of having lab, but in English studies at one point of time we never perceived or we never thought of having labs. But today, language lab, as you know, you already have it in your university. I think you understand that how this language lab has become an integral part of the English teaching in, I think, in all the universities across. So here, this entire understanding of digital era, we can initiate with this basic understanding of that gradually with the advancement of technology, the computers had started getting integrated with the discipline of English. They entered into the English classroom. They become the part of our academic ambience and the learning. And this quote again becomes important when we just try to understand its impact, overall impact, that the impact of this integration of computer in English. What Cynthia Self said in the ADE bulletin. This is basically the journal of the Association of Departments of English, which is a subsidiary of the Modern Language Association of America. So Cynthia Self said that it is this integration which is bound to affect the social systems and communications within the academic communities. So it raises the question that, okay, it started affecting the academic community, but in what way? How does it affect? How does it affect the academic environment? What are the changes which are visible here in terms of this integration of computers and English studies? So I would point out two major things here. One thing is the beginning, and then there is no stop to it. So this insertion of computer technology was basically intended to enhance the scope of learning in both quantitative and qualitative terms. And similarly, this initiation of the process of digitalization was to increase the access, to diversify the resourcefulness, and creation of the virtual spaces in the English studies classroom. And it enabled both the teachers and the learners to be more convenient in the process of learning, and then having more proficiency in this whole process of learning. So that was basically the beginning of the digital era, or the impact of the digital era that perhaps could be perceived in the discipline of humanities. Next, please. So when this phenomena happened, we actually found it very exciting. And all those academicians who were associated with the English studies discipline, they really welcomed this new mode of teaching, where the computer technology could be used for the teaching purpose, for giving a very visual understanding of the text, literary text in the classroom. But at the same time, it brought many challenges also. As I pointed out earlier, that the pedagogies of the sciences and the non-sciences subjects like humanities are not same. They are differential in nature. And as we all know, that there is a predominance of the writing and reading intensive courses in the discipline of English studies. So that's why perhaps English studies academicians were perhaps expected to know the challenges which were involved into that, and to invent the new tools and new strategies and new methodologies that would make this computer technology more relevant, more significant for the enhancement of knowledge, for the understanding of literary text. So there was a deliberation that how can we integrate the machines effectively in the operational domain of English language and literature, and how can we devise new innovative methods and techniques and strategic teaching tools which we can find more conducive to the English studies. So there was a need of the three-dimensional planning which these departments followed, and this three-dimensional planning included an assessment of the need of the teacher and learner, and the overall environment that could be produced for facilitating this teaching learning process. So basically we started to understand that what is desirable from a faculty's perspective when the English literary texts are taught in the classroom. Similarly, what is desirable from the student perspective, what do they expect, and how they are going to grasp those tools and the methods and strategies which are used by the teachers. And at the same time, having different kind of limitation in terms of technology, and the access to the technology, and the economic viability of the projects and the plans which would integrate computer technology in the English studies. So that was again a point of concern, that how technologically and economically feasible the teaching methodology and the pedagogy and the entire academic environment could be. Next, please. So could you move to the next slide, please? So what happened then? We perceived or witnessed a change in the learning environment, and this change in the learning environment was founded on the new perspectives, and there was a philosophy behind that. Here I would like to quote one essay by the strong Grant Drew. It was a research article which discussed the changing roles of teachers, what research indicates. So the philosophy behind this integration of the computer technology with the English literary text and English literary classroom was that they realized that the necessity of opening this window, that how can we open a window of thinking about 21st century skills and standards impact traditional teaching roles. The goal is to make these roles relevant for today's evolving learning needs, because we don't have the same student which we witnessed in the earlier time, in the past. Today's literature student or English studies student has very dynamic learning needs, because now it's not only the literary text written by Shakespeare or the Chaucer, they are the part of English studies, but at the same time we are having film studies also as a part of English discipline. We are also having gender studies as a part of it. We are having adaptation studies as a part of it. And even the literatures, they are not centered only on, let's say, the British tradition, but we have the African American literature also, African literature, Australian literature, South Asian literature, and all. So this 21st century changed this entire literary landscape, and there was the need of the new skills and the standards, and that affected the traditional teaching role, because the traditional role of the teacher could not satisfy the expectations and the needs of the new learner of the 21st century. So what happened that English discipline and the academicians visualized the aim of this 21st century teaching in terms of the development of knowledge, high order skills and character, as well as the establishment of this lifelong learning habits, because now the learning does not stop just with the classroom, but it goes beyond the classroom. So it's not only like the text which is taught by the teacher in the classroom that is sufficient for the knowledge hunger or the desire of the knowledge on the part of the student, but they would like to go beyond the classroom and they would like to explore many other dimensions associated with that. It makes the learning a lifelong habit, because literature, understanding of the literature does not end with the classroom, and it goes further when we join the professional worlds also. So even in the corporate world, we have the different kind of stories and the narratives which are used for training process. And yeah, am I audible? Yeah. So this way, there was an ability to learn what, that is how to learn with the technology. So it means there was, just a minute, there's some call. Yeah, I'll just put it on the silent mode. Yeah, so there was a need, there is actually need to develop an ability not to learn the text, but to learn how to learn with the technology as the central roles in the new picture of teacher effectiveness. So both teacher and students are expected to learn how to learn with the technology. So the teacher is expected to teach with the help of technology, and the students is expected to learn with the help of technology, and that is too as a lifelong process where the literature does not end with the classroom. So we predict there will be an increasing emphasis on the teacher's technological, pedagogical content knowledge. It means that the role of the teacher, especially with regard to the English discipline, has changed, because now the teacher does not perform only the traditional role of lecturing the students, but the teacher has turned into a facilitator of learning. It means that the teacher guides the student, it opens the mind of the student, he or she makes different resources available to the student, and that is possible for the teacher to do when the teacher himself or herself is technologically equipped, pedagogically equipped, and have sufficient content knowledge. This is called TPAC. That is the terminology which is used by these thinkers, by these scholars in this particular essay, The Changing Roles of the Teachers. So this TPAC marked by an integration of knowledge in all the three components, that is technology, pedagogy, and content. So perhaps the today's English language and literature teacher is standing in the classroom not just as a teacher but as a facilitator, who is expected to have this combination of the technology, that is the knowledge of technology, understanding of technology, the way of communicating with the students in this new mode, which is basically a technologically mediated mode that can be called the pedagogy, and the content which can be used. Why I'm referring to content? Because in the traditional literature classroom, the content is, suppose you can say, a poem which is being taught there, and then that particular text of, let's say, the 10 lines poem or 15 lines poem, or let's say 50 lines poem, that becomes the content to be taught. But now this content does not remain just the 20 lines poem or 15 lines poem, but there are a lot many other references which are accessible through the digital sources. They come here in the frame of reference while understanding this text. And I would like to explain it with the help of the example later, where I would like to give you a case study of the English literature classroom, especially the Indian English literature, and a poem by Arvind K. Mehrotra, that how this can be taught there in a new mode, which is technologically mediated, which is facilitating the different digital resources to come in and then play a role to open the mind of the students. Next slide, please. So I think you can understand that this is actually the change in the learning environment, which has become a real experience of every day for the English teacher in the English studies classroom. Kindly go to the next slide, please. So when we talk about this change in the learning environment, then we definitely talk about a digitally equipped classroom. So what is the conception of a digitally equipped classroom? So definitely computer remains there as an integral part of that tech mediated English classroom. So computer with the projector, with the screen, with the internet facility. So that is creating a different kind of space. It's a hybrid space. It's a mixture of the online and offline space. So it's a physical space also, at the same time it's a virtual space also. So this is basically a digitally equipped classroom which is basically a hybrid classroom with the different online and offline platform and resources available there at one point of time, and that allows the teacher to interconnect with the entire educational network for acquiring and disseminating knowledge, because the teacher can go to any digital resource to open it on the projector and then show it on the screen, and then may facilitate some kind of analysis or interaction among the students and with the students there. So basically it's not the teacher and the student only, there is the entire educational network which is available there on the click, and that becomes interconnected with one single classroom. And so the knowledge becomes, it's something like, picking up that what could be relevant here in the context of a topic taught, or in the context of a particular subject taught. So there are hundreds of resources available, but out of those 100 resources, which resource would be more significant or important or more relevant in terms of a particular text which the teacher would be interested in teaching to the student. So this digitally equipped classroom is basically incorporation of the virtual spaces for facilitating learning, and that has resulted in the shift in the teacher learner paradigm, because a teacher trainer is not just at the center there as a human incarnation of complete knowledge. The teacher does not claim that he or she has complete knowledge. That a student would not be looking at the teacher as a god who is having the omniscient knowledge, but the teacher is there just being instrumental in guiding the student that how much knowledge is there available and how do they to pick up the relevant information through the different sources. And so the teacher does not remain just the only or the single source of the information in the classroom, because he or she is backed up by the other resources, digital resources which are available. And so the position of the teacher is replaced by the system that features the whole network of the knowledge with innumerable sources involved into the education. So a teacher need to be more equipped. It's not like that it has facilitated the teacher for a very easy mode. It's not like that the teacher need not to know everything because now the resources are available. In fact, the teacher need to be more equipped to manage so many resources available. Otherwise the teacher and the students would end up in the confusion. So basically the teacher trainer has more responsibility as a facilitator to use the relevant resources and guide the students in the right direction. So there in the same way, as a teacher trainers the position has changed, similarly a student learner's position is also changed. And here I would like to quote Ellen Kay, the scholar, who pointed out the difference between the student as an individual, the way he or she existed in the Renaissance period, that is in the 16th century, and the way he or she exists today in the 21st century. So Ellen Kay says, if the personally owned book was one of the main shapers of the Renaissance notion of the individual, because Renaissance man was supposed to be engaged in the you can say the reawakening of the knowledge, the reawakening of the consciousness, and that's why the Renaissance man was supposed to be very, very inquisitive, always asking the questions and all. But that inquisitiveness features very differently in the 21st century, and that's why that Renaissance individual with inquisitiveness, who would like to satisfy his or her inquisitiveness with the personally owned book, now is present amidst a pervasively networked computer of the future that would shape humans who are the healthy skeptics from the early age. So the students as human beings have always been there as skeptics. They wanted to ask questions. They wanted to know more and more. They have multiple queries. But now earlier they were having one book in their hand, and this personally owned book was the source of their information. But now this human student with the skeptic mind with lot many queries stands there in between the plethora of resources which are there present and accessible in terms of the computer technology. So this is basically the conception of the digitalized classroom, which is a hybrid of the offline and online platform, a physical space and the virtual space, and at the same time somewhere believes in the evidence-based learning, evidence-based teaching, because now we have the resources or the methods and the tools to connect the student to the real life experiences which are present there in the visual form. So this conception of the digitized classroom has this provision of the use of various audio visual aids, and then how to facilitate the evidence-based teaching, and at the same time assortment of the multiple online and offline resources. Next slide, please. So this is basically the idea of the digitalized classroom, which the English studies teacher deals with in the literature classroom. So this outlines the new role for an English teacher. So English teacher becomes a technology designer for specific objectives. And what could be those objectives here in terms of the new perception of our education or the knowledge system? Because you all know that we have this new education policy. It again has made certain provisions for the changes. I think you all are aware that it is emphasizing the incorporation of the MOOC courses in the English studies, in fact all curriculums, of course for the English studies also. I'm talking in the context of English studies. So how can we incorporate these MOOC courses in the English studies curricula? Similarly, we need to be very, very clear with the learning objectives, that what we want to teach the student, what a particular course would be teaching to the student. And it is also emphasizing on the vernacular language that could come in between to facilitate the studies. So English itself is a global language, being an international language, an alien language, which is Indianized, of course, but at the same time comes in connection with the vernacular which are spoken here in India in terms of Indian culture scale. So in such kind of environment, how English teacher can play a role of the technology designer for the preconceived learning outcome, that perhaps what kind of learning outcome that teacher is expecting here by teaching a particular text, by teaching a particular course as a part of the program. And similarly, how teacher can design this technologically equipped classroom and the resources for the improved learning ambience. So what I'm talking about is basically the theoretical ground on which this entire integration of the computer technology with the English studies stand. And then it allows us to do a lot of experimentation with these resources and methods and strategies available, which would meet the objective, in terms of giving you the real concrete output. So digitalization of this literature classroom is basically to connect with the relevant source material with easy access, and at the same time ensure wide range of the possible assortment. So I would like to give example here for the courses which we teach here in our university, and where perhaps we try to find out the scope which would allow us to integrate this computer technology and the offline online resources, the integration of those resources, the creation of the virtual spaces in the English literature classroom for improving the learning ambience and for facilitating more effective learning on the part of the student. So here we prefer to introduce the visual imagery, because using computer technology and then making the visual imagery come there in the classroom. The visual imagery, which, as you know, Principal Sir was pointing out that earlier we were English students in terms of just imagining there in the mind. There was no technological equipment or the instrument available there to see those images by all, and then sharing that collective experience of seeing those visual images which are facilitating the textual understanding of some great literary work. So this introduction of visual imagery is basically, it is introduced in the English studies classroom today to enhance the overall conception of the text. And when it is done in the English studies classroom, teaching the literary text with the help of the visual imageries drawn from the different internet sources, digital sources, it triggers the argumentative discussion in more effective manner. It augments the textual impression for greater analytical understanding. And at the same time, teacher can use this opportunity to channelize the learner's investigative disposition in the desired direction. Teacher could give the direction to the thought process of the students. I would like to give the example like we have Shakespeare's classic text here to teach in the English studies classroom. But then they are taught traditionally in terms of like what is the plot, who are the characters, what kind of action takes place there in the play, and then uh, what is happening, there. So the dialogues, what kind of dialogues are taking place there, what could be the meaning of those dialogues. We have this kind of teaching. But then I want to discuss Shakespearean text, let's say the Tempest, not just as a plot or as the characters, their action and all. I want to discuss the whole idea of that colonial domination which is projected there in the play The Tempest. So I, as a teacher, would like to channelize the investigative direction. I want to discuss that text in terms of the post-colonial implications, not just as a Renaissance play written by Shakespeare, a great tragicomedy written by Shakespeare. I don't want to discuss it just in that manner. So I, as a teacher, as an English teacher, can use the various internet resources to create that environment and facilitate that learning environment where the learners' investigative dispositions are directed into that manner, and then an argumentative discussion can take place in the classroom. So that becomes a very effective pedagogical strategy used by the English studies teacher to channelize the learners' dispositions in the desired direction with the help of the online resources. Next slide, please. So I think you are understanding how the role of the teacher has changed here, and it gives certain advantages also. Of course, it poses certain challenges to the teacher, but then at the same time it allows various advantages also. Using that, the teacher can be more effective in terms of his or her objective, and then could meet that learning objective which is already decided there before initiating with that particular topic. So let's talk about that how visual imagery can be used in the English classroom, and perhaps that would be more evident if I give you an actual illustration of it. So I'm talking about a class which is basically Indian English literature class, and here we have picked up this subject of teaching a poem. This poem is written by Arvind Mehrotra, the Indian English writer, and it is titled The Sale. Now this poem has its own challenges, that how to make it understand to the students who perhaps may find it very difficult because of the abstract images which are used in this poem, because of the ideas which are embedded so deeply into the poem that you cannot make connection, connection of the idea with the images which are projected in the poem. So this is the particular poem, The Sale, which I would like to illustrate here, just to give you an idea how we can use various internet resources to facilitate the learning ambience, the ambience of the learning environment, and then fulfilling the objective of directing the students' investigative disposition in a particular direction. So this particular poem is titled The Sale because it is talking about the negotiations, the bargaining which take place in the real life. And this poem has this underlying idea of the surrealism, which is basically the literary concept that need to be explained while explaining this poem, The Sale. So this is surrealism. I think you all know that surrealism was a literary movement in which many artists like Breton and others, they tried to unleash the creative faculty of the human subconsciousness and unconscious human mind. So that's why it becomes very challenging when we as a literature teacher are supposed to teach these kind of the poems there in the classroom. So to facilitate this understanding of the concept of surrealism, which is underlying in the poem The Sail, there are various digital resources that could be used. So the digital resources which are applied here for understanding that, these are given here. Perhaps it is visible on the slide. You can see that, because I'll go to the next slide and tell you that how these resources are used to make students understand this whole conception of the surrealism in the poem The Sail. So what is the teaching strategy here? That we can use visual imagery to explain poet's word imagery in the form of literary text, because the poet has created various images in the poem. These images are basically the word pictures, and they exist in the poem, or they are present in the poem as a form of a textuality. They're in the form of a text, word composition. But then there can be some supporting visual images which perhaps could be used through the online resources and could be incorporated into the Indian English literature classroom to understand those word imageries. Now, the learning tool which is used here is basically digitalized surrealistic painting, because there are many surrealistic painters like Rene Magritte and Salvador Dali. So they have painted, digitally. They have painted various paintings, and they are available online, and that instantly give the understanding of what surrealism is. So what we cannot make student understand very conveniently here just by one line or by 1 hour lecture becomes a very on the spot experience when the students are exposed to these kind of digitalized resources. So here the method which is perhaps can be used here for teaching this concept of surrealism with the help of the poem The Sail is connecting the digital surrealism with Arvind Mehrotra's poetic conception of the surrealism as projected by him in the poem The Sail. Go to the next slide. So here the poetry has been brought in in the interface with the features of the surrealistic art. And so we need to understand first of all what is surrealism. So it was a 20th century avant-garde movement in art and literature which actually sought to release the creative potential of the unconscious mind, like by the irrational juxtaposition of images. So what happens in the poem The Sail, there is a series of images. The poet is talking about the continents, different continents, Australia, Asia, America, Europe and everything. He's talking about forest, river and skeleton and time and place. There are multiple images which do not have connection with each other at all. And so it becomes very difficult for the student to understand such kind of the literary text, which is basically giving you not the realistic picture, but a surrealistic picture. Means the realism which is experienced by the unconscious or subconscious mind. So introducing these kind of abstract concept in the literature classroom is a challenge. And how the digital sources become very much instrumental in conveying so, because surrealism is a cultural movement which revolutionized human experience, and computer technology through the simulation, through various you can say virtual space programs and the gaming techniques and all, make it possible to have that kind of human experience. You are aware of the computer games where actually the game player is involved into a virtual world altogether. It is the world which is created by the mind only, which is not present there in the physical world. So the student becomes aware of the possibility of such kind of thing, or existence of such kind of things which are not physically present. So let me talk about the surrealism first, that what are the features of the surrealism here. For example, in the surrealism, there are dreamlike scenes are created, there are symbolic images are visible, there are unexpected illogical juxtaposition, there are bizarre mixture of the ordinary objects, there is spontaneity, there are games and techniques to create random effect, there are visual puns, there are distorted images and biomorphic shapes and all. So it's all the game of the mind, the way the mind thinks, and then it brings it out in the form of whether the word picture or a painting where the observer finds it difficult and challenging to connect those ideas which are present there in the form of images there in the painting or a poem. So here the references which we have used in the classroom is basically those surrealistic artists Salvador Dali and Rene Magritte, who have painted those surrealistic pictures, and they become very good resource to explain the idea of surrealism when we are dealing with the with this poem The Sale by Arvind K. Mehrotra. Kindly go to the next slide, please. So this is the poem. This is just to give you an idea how difficult this poem can be to understand. Now see, the poet says, "It is yours for the price, and these old bits have character too. Today they may not be available. Naturally, I can't press you to buy them. And were I not living, you hear the sun choking with an eclipse. I would never have thought of selling. You may take your time though and satisfy yourself. Yes, this is Europe, that America, this is Scarecrow Asia, the Groin Africa, and Amputated Australia. These 5, I don't have more. Maybe another egg-laying island remains in the sea. You remember in my letter I wrote of forest. They are wrapped in leaves and there should be no trouble in carrying them. This skull contains the rivers. About that I am sorry. Had you come yesterday, I might have given you 2. I'll take another look. Yes, I do have many mummies somewhere. Only last night the pyramids came and knocked at my gate for a long time." So just see the images which are created by the poet Arvind K. Mehrotra. It's so difficult to, first of all, make sense out of those images here. What does the poet, talk about here? The poem is titled The Sale. So basically the title gives you, the idea that what is the theme of the poem. The poem is talking about the sale, the negotiation, because this entire life is nothing but the kind of negotiations and the bargain that take place. Different people, different parties, different countries, they all are bargaining with each other. So basically, as a part of this negotiating world, we use bargaining language, we use negotiating language, we use the language of the sale here. We try to sell out something. So what kind of things are being sold out here in this world as a life experience? We are selling our continents, we are selling our forests, we are selling our rivers, we are selling our monuments, and that is the reality. And so the poem begins with the statement, "It's yours for the price." Yani, if you are ready to pay the price, then it's yours. So this next slide, please. Next slide, please. So here you can see that this entire poem is nothing but a series of multiple images which become very difficult to understand. I'll not read the entire poem. I'll just give you some idea, some images. For example, at one place the poet says the microscope contains the margins of a poem. At another place the poet says these round things are bangles that long once a gun. He's giving you the contrast of the bangle, which is a reflection of the beauty, which is reflection of the joy of life, and then the gun, which is basically a destructive ammunition. So one represents the joy, other represents the destruction. So contrasting images are there. So these kind of images are present in the poem, which actually makes it very challenging to teach to the 21st century learner who has a scientific temperament, who would like to make sense of the things in terms of the physicality. So how to connect with these kind of images and the idea which lie behind these images, perhaps it's not so easy. But then the whole process of the digitalization, enabling the virtual classroom, offline, online resources, and then ambience of the learning experience make it possible if we connect the digital surrealism with this literary textuality of the poem, The Sale. Next slide, please. So here, this is the third part of the poem. And now I am picking up only those 2 particular extracts which could be explained with the help of the digital surrealistic paintings. So these 2 extracts are, one image is, "I have a skeleton too. It is full of butterflies who at dawn will carry away the crown." And another extract is, "Can you climb this ladder? Well, that is the sun and moon. And with this candle, you can work the cloud. I'm sorry, I was short at space and had to pack the great bear in this clock." So these are the two particular extract which I would like to explain here with the help of the digital surrealism, which perhaps enables the learning of the concept by a student located in the 21st century classroom. Go to the next slide, please. Let's move to the next slide. Yeah. So this is the particular extract. Now these are the images which are drawn from the digital, surrealistic paintings available there. And as I said, that Salvador Dali and the Rene Magritte, they are the main, the artists behind these paintings and all. So when these sources are made available to the student with the help of the computer technology, because these are the only 3 selected ones. There are multiple other images also which are available there. So here when they are made to make sense of these lines with the help of these images, then perhaps, they come out with their own creativity. They can understand the unleashing of the subconscious mind here. So the poem says, can you climb this ladder? So there is image of a ladder which is telling that how it is moving from the earth to the sky. So ladder is basically, you can say, become very, very visual instrument to connect the earth and the sky. So that is the sun and the moon. And with this candle, you can work the clouds. So it means this is basically an attempt on the part of the speaker to connect the earth with the sky, climb the social ladder, becoming more and more successful, and then making it feasible in terms of the you can say the nature imagery which is there. So basically, the time, the concept of the time, you can see that there is a clock here. So the human beings try to stop the clock. They want to control the time. They want to control the nature. They want to control the sun and moon. They want to reach to those sun and moons with the help of the ladder. They want to work out the cloud themselves. So this is basically the human being there at the center, in his very negotiating, in his very bargaining nature, where he would like to control everything, the space and the time and everything. So nowadays we do not look at the time as when the sun rises and when the sun sets. We look at the time with the help of the clock. So this entire time, the concept of time has been somewhere shut down into that clock, the concept of the clock. So this way we are living in a world where the human beings try to conquer and control the time and the space and the nature and everything, and that's why he negotiates. So here this conversation is between the buyer and the seller says that, can you climb this ladder? Can you reach to the sun and moon? You can work out the clouds. Say, I'm going to provide you this opportunity where you can be in the control, and you can purchase these objects, and you can own these objects. So basically it is owning the time, owning the space, owning the nature, which can be done if you have a price to pay. So if you can afford, if you have money, you can control the time, space, continents, forests and everything. So this is basically the idea which has been projected, not directly, but with the help of the word images, which become more accessible, more understandable to the student. So when we, as the English class teacher, literature class teacher, try to facilitate their, as a part of our discussion in the classroom with these kind of the images, that is the poetic surrealism, the poetic conception of the poet, and then the surrealistic images, which are again enforcing the same idea, depicting the same idea. The student becomes the person to connect those ideas, to understand those ideas and interpret those ideas, from his or her own understanding. So the teacher remains no more there at the center. It becomes a student-centric learning technique where, with the help of the various resources, he becomes, the part of the interaction, and the argumentative discussion can take place. So I would like to go to the next slide, please. So this is the extract where the poet invokes the outlandish imagery of the time and space to communicate the idea of the negotiation. And these digital sources which are applied there to understand this whole idea of the surrealism, the different images which do not connect to each other, which actually produce random impact, which actually allow you to know the world which is not physically possible, which is not manifested there in front of you. So through these sources, which I have already, enlisted here in the slide. So these digital sources, when applied and bring in connection with the Mehrotra's poetic conception of the time and the space and the negotiating nature of the world, then students are capable to make sense out of it. So I really had a very good interaction, very very argumentative discussion in the classroom when this poem was taught with the help of these digital sources. Next slide, please. Now this is another extract which I wanted to take as an example. Now the line says, I have a skeleton too. It is full of butterflies, who at dawn will carry away the crown. So I actually, gave them, the students, just extract these lines and then presented these three surrealistic paintings, and then said that you make sense out of it. Are you able to understand that what are the ideas connected here? So you could see that the line is referring to the crown, which is worn on your head. But now at the end, when the death takes away your life, then the face remains no more, the head remains no more, it remains just a skeleton. And this is a skeleton which is full of the butterflies, because the death will carry it away somewhere in the unknown region, and so you would no more be in the control, because the poem was talking about the control over the time, the place, and the nature and everything. So this control would not remain anymore with you as a human being when the death will come, and then you will be taken by the death somewhere up in the sky, somewhere away in the territory and all. So he says, the sailor is saying that I have lot many other things also, I have debt also to give you. So you perhaps, if you want to buy that, you can take that. So basically he is referring to the authority which is no more permanent, because when the death comes, then it would take the authority altogether. So again, the poet is using very surrealistic images, very illogically connected images here to convey that idea. Please go to the next slide. So this is the extract 2, where the poet conveys how the authority symbolized in the crown finally proves short-lived and is carried away by the death. And these are the digital sources which are applied, and students were made to understand these lines and connect these images and then interpret them in their own way. And this way we can have a number of you can say sources, digital sources, because this is just one experiment, one subject, one classroom, but there are lot many other subjects and the topics also which perhaps could be taught in the English studies classroom with the help of the online resources. So that perhaps makes us understand the importance of these new digital resources made available to us by the technology. Here I would like to cite one more example, because I don't want to make it very long, and so I have not cited multiple examples. I have just taken one example, but this kind of strategy works there in the classroom also, where we try to teach the post-humanism, the idea of the post-humanism. I think you all know as a literature scholar that we are living in the post-humanist world. We are living in the world which is technologically determined. So here we talk about the cyborg, we talk about the science fiction and all. So when we were there, discussing this whole idea of the post-humanism and the transhumanism, I thought that the films which are basically the adaptation of the science fiction, they would be a very, very good resource to make students understand this whole idea of the post-humanism. So I picked up this movie, The Fly. I don't know whether you have seen this movie or not, but in that particular movie, that the scientist was trying to develop some technology of the teleportation, and in this process something happened. The fly got blended with the genes of the protagonist, and that protagonist turned into the fly. So this was basically the whole idea of the transformation. So when I introduced this idea of the transhumanism with the help of that movie, The Fly, which I screened into the classroom, and I tried to facilitate some kind of discussion there after the movie, when I asked the students that now what do they understand with this transhumanism and this transformation of the human into the post-human, which is basically the hybrid of the animal and human and all. So the students came out with a very good response, and they were able to understand this whole idea of the transhumanism. So this is another example. So we can use digital resources like teaching the traditional poems like Arvind Mehrotra's The Sale, or we can also use these digital resources there to explain the new theories and new theoretical frameworks and the new ideas here, like the post-humanism, which perhaps was not the part of the literature syllabus at one point of time. So we did not discuss post-humanism in the 16th century Renaissance or the 17th and 18th century New Classical period and all. But today, when we teach English studies in the classroom to the 21st century learner, that student is very inquisitive, very curious to know the contemporary cultural phenomena. He would like to understand, Mary Frankenstein, the Frankenstein, the novel, and then would like to understand in terms of the scientific experiment that takes place there behind it. So now the literature is also connected with the science, and science fiction is a very good example of that. Like H.G. Wells' stories are example of that. The Time Machine, there are multiple novels which are available there. So we can use digital resources to facilitate the new learning ambience, new learning environment for triggering the argumentative discussion, connecting the concepts with the real life. Because poetry, literature may put forward certain concepts and the ideas, but what is important to connect those concepts and ideas with the real life experiences. So Arvind Mehrotra introduced this concept of the surrealism. That is, the world is not just what you see. The world is surreal, means more than real, more than the physical reality. The world is what you experience in your mind. And this poem tells you that the world is basically a kind of negotiation or the bargaining taking place at different level among different parties and all. And we are trying to sell the concept. We are trying to control, because the seller tried to control the things for his or her own benefit. So basically, we also try to sell out something to the other for our own benefit. Why? Because we want to be in the control of the things. So these kind of surrealistic ideas become more grasping when we have these kind of the digital resources available with us. Kindly go to the next slide, please. So this is just an example of one particular literature classroom where the idea of this literary idea of the surrealism is explained with the help of the digital surrealism, and how the teaching learning process is made more experimental in nature, more argumentative in nature, more connecting in nature in terms of connecting the abstract ideas and the real world, and then the literature and the science. So we now come to the end of this discussion with a larger perspective on this changing scenario of the English studies. So larger perspective perhaps would introduce you new breakthroughs and new measures and the provisions which are setting directions for the new pedagogy in the digital era. So we have a very different kind of learning environment which need to be made more and more applicable in the field of the English studies also. Because English studies being a non-science humanities subject and more writing and reading intensive, it becomes very interesting to connect it with the new technology, with the new concepts that perhaps we can find more relevant here. So today in this digital era, we have free and open textbook. So there are online textbooks and instructional environments which are available there. We have virtual classrooms like Piazza, Brihaspati, Google Classroom, where we can just upload these different digital resources and then can make the classroom work. We can optimize the class time with the combination of the offline and online instructions and make it more web enhanced. We can have e-advising provision like monitoring the students' engagement, send out automated warning, and signal faculty and academic advisors about impending troubles and all. We can have innovative assessment measures here, assessment based on the digital stories. This is again a very interesting part. We need not to remain confined to the traditional measures of the assessment. Now the assessment can be done through the new digital resources available. For example, we can make our assessment based on the digital stories, collaborative websites, student written annotated text, and also, so these are the new innovative measures of the assessment. And similarly, as our new economic policy also emphasizes that we can motivate the students to go for the earning credits beyond the regular curriculum and the classroom. For example, they can go for the MOOC courses, and then through the online classrooms, through the online lectures, they can enhance their learning and can can learn English literature more effectively in more dynamic manner. So these are the larger perspectives which open with these new breakthroughs and the new directions which are coming up with the digital era, the changing learning environment in the digital era, the availability of the new digital resources with the teacher, changing the paradigm of the teacher and the student, and connecting, let's say, the literature which is so ancient, starting since the beginning of the human civilization. So the literature with this 21st century student learner who has a very scientific temperament and who would like to understand the things in its logical manner. So maybe we can use these digital resources to facilitate that kind of teaching learning environment in the English classroom. So thank you so much. I would like to conclude my speech here, and questions are welcome.
Thank you, madam, for the wonderful explanation on the use of digital technology for teaching English literature. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. There are a few questions. Students want to know that how digital technology can be used to teach Shakespearean drama.
Okay, first of all, like we have even adaptations also, like the Shakespeare dramas are made available in the adapted form. I would like to give a very interesting example of let's say Romeo and Juliet. It's a literary classic. There are 3-4 movies which have been made on the Romeo and Juliet, and there is one very interesting movie which is basically presenting those Romeo and Juliet in the 21st century context, where we have this corporate rivalry that is taking place between the two corporate companies and all. So you could see that basically Shakespearean drama, which is actually talking about the love at the center, which is talking about the rivalry between the two families. These are the basic ideas which Shakespearean drama is projected. Now you can have the adapted movie of Romeo and Juliet in the traditional setup. You have the same Italian Renaissance projected there. I think the director is Baz Luhrmann. Baz Luhrmann has adapted that movie. So we have 3 versions. One is the traditional depiction of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet as it is. Then we have this Baz Luhrmann's version, which is depicting Shakespearean Romeo and Juliet in a 20th century context. And then we have Shakespearean Romeo and Juliet in the animated form, which is basically an animated movie which where the two set of the gnomes, they would be competing with each other. So here it's not just to teach plot and the character, who are Romeo and Juliet, what is the story and all. That basic narrative everybody knows, the students know it. There are a lot many internet resources available. Now they need to understand that what ideas Shakespeare is projecting into Romeo and Juliet, how those ideas, how those human emotions remain relevant here in every age, even in 21st century also, and can be interpreted that. So Shakespearean drama, suppose if we are thinking about the experimental strategy to teach it, I would prefer to have these adaptations on Romeo and Juliet with that literary text of the Romeo and Juliet, and then facilitate some kind of discussion in the literary classroom. So first understand it in the traditional manner, then try to understand the same ideas in the changed scenario of the culture. So these movies become a very, very important digital resource here to teach Shakespearean drama.
Thank you, ma'am. We have one more question. What are the problems usually faced by the teachers while using the technology? And please provide some suggestions how to avoid that.
First of all, the teacher also need to be tech savvy. So like we are coming from the traditional background, and also sometimes I find that our students are more tech savvy and they are able to handle, all these instruments and equipments more efficiently. So these are the challenges. But the what I find that as a teacher, what is more challenging for the for you be a teacher and then uh, choose or select the appropriate material, because this digital era has made n number of the resources available to us. So out of all those n number of resources, what we can select here in a particular context, in a particular teaching context which we are going to use. So I would say, first of all, teacher needs to be trained technologically so that they become comfortable with that, and then the teacher need to select the appropriate and the relevant material out of endless digital resources available to the teacher. So these are the two major challenges which the teacher face. So I think that comes with your efforts, efforts on your part to take measures in this regard. So I was not very much comfortable with lot many technological instrument earlier, but now I have started using those technological instruments in my classroom, and I feel that my classroom is benefited by that. I'm also using the Google Classroom, so it's possible for me to, during Corona also, I think we all were doing that. So it was so satisfying to continue with the effective teaching even at that point of time. So I could facilitate interaction in the Google Classroom through dropping the messages and all, and then I could very conveniently upload multiple resources like the text now that is available in the digital form. So the digitalized text, then the lecture which perhaps can be drawn from some other source. My own lecture I recorded and then I upload it in the Google Classroom. Then the supporting material which I could gather on that. So these are basically, the things which we need to be familiar with. So the problem is that you need to train yourself, and whatever challenges you face there, then you can do it. Resources are again a very big challenge. Sometimes we do not have enough resources to provide that kind of learning environment here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your suggestions.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the detailed explanation of the students' questions. We are moving ahead with the next part. For that, I request Assistant Professor Mrudula Nair, ma'am, to introduce our today's resource person, Dr. Maya Shankar Pandey.
Good morning to one and all present. It is my immense pleasure to introduce Professor. Sorry. It is my immense pleasure to introduce Professor Maya Shankar Pandey. Sir is Senior Most Professor in Department of English, Banaras Hindu University, with over 3 decades of teaching and research experience. Professor Pandey's research and teaching focus on contemporary literature and theory, poetry, fictions, Indian literature in English, English language teaching, communication, and teachers' education. He has, to his credit, a PhD in English from Banaras Hindu University. Dr. Pandey was former head of Department of English, Banaras Hindu University. Sir has guided 17 PhD so far and is supervising 8 PhD dissertations. He has worked as principal investigator for UGC major research project on poetry, Indian diaspora. Sir has received National Scholarship Award. Professor Pandey has published 5 books, including 2 co-edited books, and contributed more than 40 articles and papers in various anthologies and journals. Sir was one of the member of editor board of 11-volume Encyclopedia of on Hinduism, and currently the editor of in-house journal. Professor Pandey has organized international conferences. Sir has was also delivered many keynote and plenary addresses in various national and international conferences and seminars. Sir has conducted several training and testing programs in area of aviation communication for air trafficking control and airport officer as resource person. Professor Pandey has delivered more than 70 distinguished invited lectures, including memorial lectures, motivational lectures, skill-based training lectures at refresher and oriented courses. His notable work, academic and administrative responsibility include as Chief Administrator, Warden of City Delegacy, Banaras Hindu University, Deputy Coordinator, Malviya Center of Ethics and Human Value, Professor in charge for Press and Publication Division, Convener, Member Panel of Expert NAC Belgaum, Expert Committee Member appointed by UGC for drafting learning outcome-based curriculum framework for UG and PG courses for English. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of KLE College and Department of English. It is an immense honor to have such a distinguished resource person with us for today's conference. I once again welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for introducing me. I'm very happy to be associated with this webinar, and I also welcome the delegates, the participants in the webinar, and also compliment the organizers who invited me for this webinar as a resource person. The topic which I'm going to discuss is exploring interface between Indian dialogic education and teaching literature and English language, teaching ELT and literature. So what I'm going to focus on is that how Indian educational system, philosophy of language and perspective regarding language and literature can be used in modern times using technologies for teaching literature and language. So I shall be taking into account 2-3 things. One is that what is education, what is language, what is pedagogy in Indian educational system, and then philosophy of language also will be discussed. Another point would be I'll bring into context Bhartrihari's idea of ideas propounded in Vakyapadiyya, his theory, and how language is a cognitive system, how it is a communicative system, and what kind of methodology that will be used, that was used in teaching Upanishad and in the Gurukul system. Can we use and utilize Gurukul system of teaching and how Upanishads were taught in the past can be utilized in teaching ELT and literature? So first thing first, let me have a very brief survey of what is Indian educational system. We all know that India has a very long, linguistic tradition and pedagogical tradition. Education, language, and pedagogy, they have been the foundations of India's intellectual history. In Indian tradition, education is intertwined with language, and language is inseparable from knowledge. And in a very fascinating analogy, language, which is known as Shabd, it is compared to Deepak. Deepak means lamp. And in Bhartrihari's, words in Vakyapadiyya, when the lamp is lighted, it reveals itself and it also reveals others. So how, the study of language has been central to the pedagogical tradition. For example, if we want to study Vedas, then it is essential to study Vedangas, and there are 6 Vedangas. And out of the 6, the 4 pertain to devoted to language. What are these? They are phonetics, grammar, etymology, and prosody. Am I audible to you, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So what I'm saying that the study of Vedas and Upanishads, when we study, then the four elements are important to study. One is phonetics, grammar, etymology, and prosody. This is the importance of language. And then what we say that education, about education, what is education and what were the concerns of education in the past? That was the basic aim of education was twofold: to produce virtuous and upright mind, and to enhance critical thinking, language abilities, to develop analytical abilities. These were the objectives of the traditional way of teaching in Indian educational system. So what are the general assumptions of Indian educational practices? The general assumptions are: number one, the central role of memory; number two, the centrality of the teacher as agent; and number three, the text, oral and written, as instrument; and the fourth one is the training of the mind as instrument of knowledge. These four basic assumptions were the cornerstone of the traditional educational system, where memory was very important, where teacher was very important, where training of mind was important, and the texts were important. In that way, when we say that there is a Chandogya Upanishad, and in Chandogya Upanishad, it is said that education has a holistic implications. By this holistic implications means that education does not mean how to memorize the texts, but how to internalize it, and how to analyze it, and how to evolve the individual and the society to a better, to become, spiritually, intellectually, socially, updated and involved. Now, what was the idea of language, and what are the basic assumptions of language in Indian tradition? So language is primarily speech. That was the first assumption in Indian tradition. In Western, in linguistic tradition also, we say that language is primarily speech. So this was very old, idea in Indian system. So language is primarily speech. The second assumption is language is a cognitive system. And third is language is a constructivist system. So when I say that language is primarily speech, what does it mean? Look at, we have three words: bhasha, vak, vani. These three are basically the sound substance. And the oldest, linguistic tradition, if you survey for this, then you'll find phonetics is the oldest one. Phonetics is based on speech. And this is the first science of language in India. And Panini's, Panini's grammar, Panini's, phonetics is the basis of the Indian tradition. The other two assumptions, which I say that language is basically, cognitive system and constructivist system. What do I mean? This refers to the philosophy of language. So in the philosophy of language, when I say language is a cognitive system, it means that it is not just a system of communication. Language is a system of communication, fine. But basically in the Indian tradition, it is a cognitive system. And this cognitive system, it encourages plurality, intelligence, consciousness, and different ways of thinking. And it focuses on reflection of thinking, how to reflect on ideas. And Shashore, Chomsky, all adhere to this Indian linguistic system that way. So it is the language of mind. And what is the constructivist system? It implies that all cognition takes the form of language. And this is reality that is cognized by us is the linguistic reality. And this is known as languaging. If I use Bhartrihari, if I bring into context Bhartrihari here, Vakyapadiya, so there is a term Shabdana that is translated as languaging. And these days we also listen to trans-languaging. I'm not going into the trans-languaging, but yes, definitely I'll take up Shabdana and languaging, that how does language manifest. So it is based on the relationship between language, thought, and reality. These are the language plus thought plus reality. These are the three combined, use of language. When I say language, I mean these three things. So Bhartrihari, is a grammarian and philosopher both. And if we read his Vakyapadiya, that is of the 5th century AD, there we find a major concept, and that is the concept of spota theory, and how the idea of sport can be used in learning language, in teaching literature, in analytical abilities and cognitive system. So this is fundamental to the analysis of language, the theory of spota. And sport is two-sided. It is a two-sided coin. Number one is the Shruti Shakti, the sound substance. And another is the meaning unit. Sound and meaning, which is known as signifier and signified. In the modern, Saussurean translation, signifier and signified. But the difference between the Indian and the Western concept is, that is very crucial to understand, is that signifier and signified was based on the convention. But here, signifier and signified are nitya, eternal. They are intertwined. You cannot separate from sound to meaning. So word and sounds, they are inseparable. They are eternal, they are nitya. How? And an analogy is there in Vakyapadiya, that is like fire in the stick. Fire in the stick. So you can't separate the two. This is the major difference when we teach modern linguistics. Then we say that they are conventional like this. But tell the students that, look, here lies the difference. And the difference is, in another way, there are three stages of this photo, of this nitya. Number one is, if I use the Sanskrit term, Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari, if I translate it, that is called, non-verbal. First is the non-verbal, hidden. Second is pre-verbal. And the third is Vaikhari, that is called verbal. So signifier, it goes beyond that. And in Veda also, even Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikhari, he does not talk about the para one, but yes, the pre-verbal stage where there is silence. Then comes the thought, and then how thought is expressed. So this thought and expression, they are intertwined. So it's not that it's so mechanical in the Western tradition. And Bhartrihari here says that language is an activity. It is cognized. And when it is cognized, all human beings participate in this. And the Sanskrit word for activity is Shabdana, that I said earlier, Shabdana. This is translated as languaging. Languaging means doing language, expressing thought. And this is also the Sanskrit word for this Shabdana or Shabda Vyavhar, sometimes you'll find. And in Bhartrihari's concept, this is the spand of consciousness, vibration of consciousness. And it vibrates through language. Thought vibrates through language. Thought anchors language and language anchors thought. Like, in Kalidas, he said that Vagartha viva samprikta Vagartha pratipattaye jagatah pitarau vande Parvati Parmeshwara. Tomorrow is Mahashivratri, Parvati Parmeshwara. So Vag and Arth, Vani, Shabd and Arth, They are so intertwined as Parvati and Parmeshwar. That is the Indian tradition. But the Western tradition separates it in a different way. So this is cognizing is languaging. So cognizing episodes has two natural factors. It has got two powers. The one power is that it illuminates. That is called Prakash. When languaging takes place, then it reveals. It reveals what? It reveals thoughts. It reveals meaning. That is called Prakash. And another, power to it is the differentiate, Vimarsh. Prakash and Vimarsh are the two languaging aspects. And in a very simple term, if I say what is this languaging, then I say interpretation is languaging. Discussion is languaging. This analyzing is languaging. So we do language. And what we do when we interpret, when we analyze, when we discriminate, then it reveals, it differentiates, and gives us pluralistic meaning. No fixed meaning that comes out of this. This is the world. When you explain the world, when you explain literature, then you find possibilities of that. And it reveals into that. So this is, he says that language is used for analysis of a text or language. It works at three levels. The first one is language as metaphysical principle. That is called tattva, linguistic potential. Language is tattva. Second is language is a shastra vyavhar. This is object of analytical study. And third is language is a matter of loka vyavhar. Means language is means of communication. Look at this, how language acts, behaves in three ways. It is the metaphysical entity. It is shastra vyavhar, to analyze the text. And thirdly, language as communication, that we teach in modern day schools and colleges, that language as communication. But language is even much more deeper than this communication. So the third stage basically is of the communicative purpose. So what he does, what is going in Vakyapadiya, he says that two things are very, very important to learn: yogyata and pratibha. Yogyata is, is a kind of semantic aspect that refers to meaning. And there is a listener that he has the pratibha. So the two elements are yogyata and pratibha are the two dimensions of communication according to Bhartrihari. And out of this, not only this, that yogyata and pratibha, they are the element that are the only thing for communication. He said that no. Beyond this, yogyata and pratibha, we have other factors like tatparya, prakarana, ambiguities, all these things, how to analyze that kind of communication. And in that way, I give you an example that, that how tatparya is important, how prakarana is important. He says that bring sandhav. He gives an example. Bring sandhav. What is this sandhav? Sandhav has got two meanings. So one meaning is horse and another meaning is salt. If I say bring sandhav, then how can this, semantic meaning can convey this, or grammatical meaning can convey this? So Bhartrihari was aware of this fact that there are ambiguities, there are tattva, there are pragmatics involved, direct and indirect, pragmatics. So bring horse. If it is, dining table mannerism like this, if you have invited someone for dinner and say bring sandhav, so don't bring horse, bring salt. This is what he's saying, that communication is a very tricky area, but he was so aware of this fact that it is the metaphysical reality, fine, it is analytical ability is there, but in communication he will come across all these aspects. Now I'm going to focus on the classical Indian pedagogy that was used in teaching Upanishad and Vedas and the Gurukul system. And that is known as the dialogic system. Dialogue, Vada. Dialogic system basically is the science of dialogue and discussion. And that was prevalent in the past. If I can remind this, you people, you might be knowing this, that Akshapad Gautam, Nayayik, Nyaya Darshan, he used the word Vada. Vad means discussion and deliberations. Akshapad Gautam propounded this. And there are three kinds of Vada. He said that Vada is the best. There are two things, Jalp and Vitanda. Don't involve yourself in Vitanda and Jalp, in teaching, in discussion, in analyzing things. Be aware of this. Because Jalp and Vitanda are very tricky things, and this is used to demolish others. That is not the real way of learning realities. So, what is the best that leads to knowledge? That is the Indian system. And this, what is a very penetrating concept. You might be knowing, Bhagavan Krishna, Lord Krishna. He says that Vad is one of my vibhutis, my attributes. Among disputants, if any kind of dispute arises, then I am as God. Arjun, listen to me. He said, Arjun, listen to me. I am, elephant, Ravat hu among animals. In trees, I am people. And among disputants, I am Vada. So this is what say. He said that Vada pravadatam aham. That is the mantra that is given there. Vada pravadatam aham. And Vada vade jayate tattva bodha. Tattva bodh, jnana, knowledge, reality, outcome of knowledge. This comes out of Vada. So use Vada. And Vada, what are the functions of Vada? Three functions. Vada imparts knowledge of the unknown, number one. It substantiates the knowledge of the known. And number three, Vad eradicates doubt. I think why can't we should use all these things, that knowledge of unknown, knowledge, whatever we know, it to be analyzed, to be discussed, to be countered, and eradicate doubts. And then, this, in order to teach Upanishad, this dialogic tradition was used, and it was followed by the Gurukul system. I'll bring into context one Upanishad, Prashnopanishad. Prashnopanishad. Prashnopanishad is based on Prashna. How to ask questions, how to do Vada, how to discuss literature or language. A very, Atharvaveda kind of thing, this Prashnopanishad. There are 6 questions, and these 6 questions were asked by his disciples. Pippalad is the guru, and his 6 students, they reached Pippalad, and he said, sir, I have certain issues to discuss you. And he said that, yes, take some time, reflect on the questions. Reflect on the questions, reflections. That is Indian tradition. It's not question for question's sake or question for defeating someone or demolish someone. Reflect, think, read, and then ask questions. And there is another principle that is, pariprashnena pranipatena. These are the 2 hallmarks of asking questions in Indian tradition. Do question, ask questions, but ask questions with modesty to learn, not with pride and arrogance that I'm going to defeat someone. And if you read, if you go through the this Gargi and Yagyavalkya Samvada in the Janak's time, and in so many Samvadas you will find that how Gargi was asking questions. But Yagyavalkya sometimes said that, Gargi, you are asking very valid questions, but the point is that you are violating one thing, pariprashnena pranipatena. So ask questions in that very modest way. This refers to teachers and students or participants, whatever. So what is happening in Prashnopanishad? Then this focuses on the value of asking questions. And it is not, it does not bring out only a single point of view. There may be many perspectives. And the teacher is not authoritative. Teacher is very friendly and discusses issues and questions with the learners. And I tell you, there are certain examples with the Kumaril Bhatt and Prabhakar. Students asked question to Prabhakar. Prabhakar was not able to answer this. He said that, but Prabhakar, modified the answer. And he said, the teacher said, oh, tum hamare guru ho. Look at this. Teachers also learn from students. This is what I say in the modern times. They are so friendly. They accept it. That yes, the knowledge should come from any corner. Even our students, they can defeat us. But it was not the purpose of defeating anyone, but it was a kind of Vada Parampara in Prashnopanishad. So the Upanishad, evolved some basic principles of teaching literature and language. I'm going to that. And it was used, I repeatedly say that it was used by the Gurukul system. So there are 7-8 procedures of pedagogy. What I want is that why can't we use, not in toto, but in some ways to integrate in ELT or literature teaching, especially for the communicative language teaching. Because communicative language is quite near to this. But with the technology, if we use technology and other things, then definitely we can use Indian dialogic system in some way or the other to enhance the competence and abilities and performance of our Indian learners as well. So point number one, the methods of teaching, the techniques of teaching in Gurukul system that I'm emphasizing, and then we can use, how can we use, we'll go to that. Questioning, number one. Questioning to initiate the dialogue. And that is called Prashna Jigyasa. Let there be Prashna Jigyasa among learners. So this is the task of the teacher with reflection, which people have said that we wait for some time, you think over this. And then real kind of Prashna Jigyasa came out. So number one. Then number two, counter questioning. The Prashna Jigyasa, start questioning, do counter questioning as well. The counter questioning may come from the teacher and from the students as well. So one should not avoid questions because it is the integral part of Vada. The third thing is that avoid too much questioning. This is also the third thing he says, that don't ask too many questions, otherwise it will sidetrack the entire discussion. This sometimes happens, there are certain naughty students in the classroom, they just disturb your class and asking so many questions which are not relevant to this. So he says questioning is important, counter questions are important, but not too much questioning. The fourth thing is the explanation of the thesis. Look at this, is languaging. Explain it. What is the statement? What is the focus? That is should be explained. Further explanations. One explanation, then further explanation. There are, language has so many layers, and that layers are to be explained after the questioning of the students. And then after the explanation, illustrate. Illustration is another technique. Explanation is one, then illustrations. And illustrations is important, but another thing is also very important in the techniques of teaching in Gurukul system and Vada, that is called narrating a story. Teachers should narrate a story, and then they become so comfortable. Even after the explanation, students do not understand, or giving illustrations, they do not understand it. It's quite likely that they might understand the issues and the concept by telling a story. So this is what the Upanishads carry out. And the Then the last thing is that deciphering the existing knowledge and for further scope. What are the gaps and what are for the further study? So look at this from 1 to 8. Questioning, counter questioning, not asking too many questions, explanation, illustrations, narrating the story, and finding this gap and further explanations, all these things. They are the various techniques, and it was used in the Gurukul system to teach Vedas, to teach literature and other things. What is my contention here is this, that can we use the ideas, precepts, insights of the traditional Indian tradition in pedagogy and learning in terms of language, education, and this? Can we use in teaching ELT, English language teaching, or literature? Or for that matter, if I bring into context communicative language teaching. So communicative language teaching also focuses on the learner's autonomy. It focuses on questions. It focuses on tasks. It focuses on group division, individual, group, and batches that you can make. Here we can use modern ICT technologies, our smartphones for that, for searching material. And material can be of various types. Earlier times, it was only oral or written. But these days, we have varieties of materials available. That is coded one, graphic material, and other kinds of material. So those materials can be used. So don't say that now those material were not available in the past. So we can't say, can we say that yes, a smartphone was available in the classical past? No. Computer, no. Internet, nothing. So this time we can use this. So to divide these students into groups that who are very knowledgeable students, who are poor, average, divide them, give them tasks, and just tell them that you are required to ask at least 2 questions. How to ask questions is one. Then how to illustrate, how to explain, how to paraphrase. They are the actually languaging activities. And languaging activities is not just communication. It is not memorization. It comes out of your evaluation, your thought process, your thinking abilities. So what is involved here to my mind is that this Gurukul system was based on comprehensive input as well as comprehensive output. Comprehensive input with this idea that yes, enrich the cognitive system, enrich the constructivist system, and then communication will come out, and communication cannot be memorized. And in many more situations, if you have the cognitive abilities, if you have got the analytical abilities, and if you have got the critical thinking, then this is known as your wisdom, your real kind of knowledge. Otherwise, memorization won't do that. So when we teach either maybe a communication, then also we should also focus on wisdom as well, or understanding. That is the hallmark of all these things. So teacher autonomy, learner autonomy is this, but digital text can be used for this, and the mobile applications from this, we can use it. So this is a kind of, to my mind, having the the Gurukul system had the democratic values that way. Generally, we think that it was teacher-centered approach only. Teacher was authoritative, not that. I can give you several examples that how teachers and students were of very friendly nature. They discussed, and I said that to Kumaril Bhatt and Prabhakar episode, that he said, "Oh, my student, you are my guru," that way. So in this way, we can say that how the performance-based learning and this collaborative learning is possible through this kind of applications. So what I said, what I focused on is this, that what is language in the Indian system? What is education in the language, in the Indian system of knowledge, in Indian intellectual tradition? What is pedagogy? and what is learning. And I brought into context only Bhartrihari, didn't Padini or others. There are so many. And then I told you that what is the role of the languaging, and languaging is not only communication, it also involves the cognitive ability, your intelligence, as well as the constructive system. Then I talked about the Vada, that what is Vada and discussion. That is very ancient tradition in India, in Nyaya Vaisheshik Siddhanta. And this was used to learn Upanishads, and how Upanishads were learned. Then we had earlier, prior to this, we had the Gurukul system. In Gurukul system, the mantra was very important. They recited mantras, they memorized it, but they also learned the meaning of that memorization as well, and they used it. And the teachers used to give them tasks. Go to the field, go to the forest, do this, do that. So we can use this, that how to learn through practice, through your own practice, through your own experiences. And that was focused on reflections, your own input that result into output. So these were my, reflections on how interface between Indian dialogic education and the ELT and literature teaching. So this is from my side. I can take some of your questions, issues, your observations to this. Actually, I have a meeting after some time, so it would be interesting that we can have some questions. Over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Is it possible to use the dialogic pedagogy in today's scenario?
That's why I'm saying that we can't use it in toto. It's impossible. But the ideas, what I just said, that let us know that what was valuable in our pedagogy in the past. So I think we can't deny the cognitive abilities of the learner to be improved, their analytical abilities to be improved, their critical thinking to be improved, and focus on memory and communication, their yogyata and pratibha. So these concepts now we are discussing in communicative language teaching. I can say that 2000 years ago, these practices, these ideas were practiced in this way. And the methodology that I enumerated from 1 to 8, from questioning to other things, why not we should use this in order to only memorize, or just you follow this in the language laboratory. Language laboratory is good, I can say, but yes, what about the mind? What about the cognitive abilities, our thinking? So we are the thinking animals as well. So we should think, we should analyze, we should explain what is good, what is not. And, the value of asking questions lead to various perspectives as well. Suppose if you're teaching a genre like drama or poetry, so it can't be only one. Teacher can promote, say, yeah, why don't you think like this? Then this thinking leads you to other domains. Oh, yes. Then it reveals. Then it discriminates. It questions. When you say Derrida into context. So when you say that Derrida, he is not destroying anything, but he said that there are various possibilities of saying things. That is available here. There can be different points of view, ma'am, in the way. What Bhartrihari says, that let different points of view emerge. Teacher's point of view is not everything. Students and varieties of responses should come from certain issues and questions. This is what my submission to you.
Okay. And it is also most of the time seen, sir, that students, only few students, they ask question in the class. So what about the rest of the students?
That is the, see, here lies the competence of the teacher, I tell you. We are also facing this time, then teachers should encourage them to ask questions. Telling something, motivating speeches, and you tell your own story that I was very shy initially, but when I asked one question, that the question was wrong, the sentence was wrong, and this is the way you will learn how to ask it. This will give you confidence. Asking questions is also a way of showing your confidence, and teachers should not laugh at the questions are student, they should say. Rather, you say that, oh yes, well done, very good questions, come up. And I say that you write 2 questions, all students should write 2 questions on their notebook, and then I'll take it. Either you take it or not, but at least they know how to write it. Just you move in the classroom and see, oh, there are grammatical errors. Then that ignore this. Then you repeat, say, yes, I found some very good questions in the class. I don't name the students, but yes, these are very fascinating questions. I give you brief answers, and I want you also, learners, to respond to this. What could be other possibilities of this question? So this is the way, that would be wonderful. These days, I think I was listening the earlier discussion. If you search for, internet, Google sources, lot of material, madam, available. But this is a huge challenge for teachers these days. Huge challenge. They say, sir, whatever you're telling is already available. What is your insight? What is new in it? Such questions will come. If you say that I'm going to teach Hamlet, they will say, sir, students have already read Othello and Macbeth and others. Then what will you do? They will ask questions pertaining to other things. So a classroom is a mixed ability class. It's not there are actually 10 to 20% students who are very brilliant. So this I think the discussion should be there, and no fixity, not a single one point of view should be correct in language, literature, explanation, and interpretation. So this is the value of teaching and learning that we can say. And NEP also, New Education Policy, also focuses on this analytical abilities and critical thinking, and to have virtuous mind. They are the objectives of the Indian classical. And teachers should know that what had happened in the Indian pedagogy. It's very hidden kind of thing that when I go to the classroom, then I just think over this. But I say that we can't use everything. The ideas can be used. The comprehensive input should be given, and comprehensive output will definitely come out of that.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing the various strategies to initiate the discussion in the classroom and to encourage our students. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you too.
Thank you so much, sir. Your thoughts-provoking address set a perfect platform for our participants to deliver their presentations.
Poonamji, thank you so much. Actually, this is the online webinar that way. It would have been wonderful if it would have been face-to-face. Then definitely I would have asked certain questions, and this to actual pedagogy in the classroom. It was just a lecture, method that generally I don't like. But what I thought that let there be a kind of interface between these two aspects. The Indian traditional knowledge system, intellectual tradition of language. And at least even if you apply for your major research project, I tell you, a lot of possibilities are there. The Paninian grammar and, this artificial intelligence. Sanskrit is the base for that, provided those who know Paninian grammar for that. Or you can say Bhartrihari's sport idea and the Indian idea that challenges the Western models of thinking and Western models of linguistics. Saussure and Chomsky. I say that look at how it is different in terms of the origin of language and the idea of various facts of language, that para, pashyanti, madhyama, and Vakhri. So before Vakhri, before this realization, there are so many things that happen. What about the silence? Even we talk in our silence, the ideas. And only manifestation is the Vakhri part. And the Western, epistemologists, Western linguists, they only focus on the Vakhri and communication. How to enrich the ways of thinking, the idea of thinking. This is the hallmark of the Indian knowledge system. And then a lot of research projects you can initiate for this, taking into concept applied linguistics. But you have to read a lot of Indian, language of philosophy. Lot of books are there, but very interesting. Knowledge of Sanskrit is required. I studied Sanskrit in my undergraduate courses, and that benefited me to go to this area. And this time I'm exploring all these things. I can read Upanishad and other Sanskrit texts. So I read Vakapadi in Sanskrit and then certain tikas and commentaries on that. Then I found, oh yes, it can be used in pedagogy just to highlight the issues in communicative language teaching. What is communication is not only Yogata and Pratibha, it involves so many things, and it has already been said 1500 years ago by Bhartrihari. These days we say pragmatics, direct, indirect, and other things. Speech Act. Speech Act is nothing. Already there is Speech Act, I tell you. So it was just a kind of familiarization of all these ideas in the existing in our educational system in earlier days.
Thank you, sir.
So I have a meeting actually going to the department for one of the meetings. If you have some other question now, you can email me. You can, and then we shall be in touch. Here I teach, literature and language and applied linguistics. That is my domain. I did my PhD in poetry. That is my first love, and then this analysis of literature and language and ELT, communication, and teacher education. This is what, and Madam introduced that one thing that I worked in the area of diaspora literature. 30 years ago, I got a major research project from the University Grants Commission, and still this is fascinating idea for me, because a lot of changes have come in the diaspora studies, and I study diaspora language as well from the linguistic point of view. So you all are budding scholars, I can see. So my best wishes to all of you here present, and we shall be in touch. Thank you. And
thank you. Thank you so much, sir. We would love to have your one face-to-face session in college. Thank you.
That would be better. See, the real form will come in the classroom that way.
Sure, sir.
Okay, ma'am. So I also invite you all to Banaras, Kashi. If you have time, you can come. You can be my guest.
Sure, sir.
And we'll interact.
Sure, definitely, sir.
Okay, bye-bye. Namaskar.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, once again. Before we start the technical session, here I declare the end of inaugural session. We are taking a break for lunch, about half an hour. We'll come back at 1 o'clock. Thank you so much.